Hello there. It's your girl Valerie Mason Chase, and welcome to another episode of Marriage Beyond the Breach. So, as you can see, your girl's flying solo tonight. No cookie man, no invited guests. It's just me and y'all. So, I am not totally alone, but what I would like for those of you who are watching live to try to make this as interactive as possible. If you have questions, if you have comments, if you want to share some of your own experience, I really appreciate it. So I just want to give a shout out to those who are here already. There's Miss Ali, my son Jono, Nicole. Thank you for being here. And anyone who hasn't, oh, there's my baby girl Sidel. I appreciate you. And anyone else who's here, just put a comment in the chat and let me know that you're listening and where you're listening from. I always appreciate it. And I just want to just give a huge thank you and appreciation to those of you who are regular viewers. I do appreciate it. And as always, if you subscribe and share, and just hit the like button. And I would appreciate that so much. So tonight, we have a great topic. I know y'all hear me say that every week, and I think a lot of weeks you've heard me talk about those therapists, John and Julie Gottman, and about Gottman therapy for couples counseling. Well, there's something. Hey, Elaine. Hey, Cuz. Thank you so much for being here. There is something that the Gottmans have developed that's called the Four Horsemen of the Relationship Apocalypse, and it was created to address toxic communication patterns. So what it is the Four Horsemen. It's a metaphor that the Gottmans use to describe some negative communication patterns that, if they are left unchecked and if they are not addressed, can signal, not can, they will signal real trouble for a relationship. Those four horsemen are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. And we're going to talk more about each one in detail. But first, you might be wondering, why the four horsemen? Where did that name come from? And why did the Gottmans decide to name these four things as four horsemen? You might have heard that term before, the four horsemen. So where have you heard it? And most of us have heard it in reference to scripture. It shows up in the Bible. But what does that have to do? The four horsemen in the Bible have to do with the four horsemen of the relationship apocalypse. So let's talk about that for a little bit. So in the Bible, in the 6th chapter of the book of Revelation, and it's Revelation singular, not Revelations plural. I'm just saying, that's just a little kind of a pet peeve of mine. But anywho, so in the 6th chapter of Revelation, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, they're symbolic. And what they symbolize are major destructive forces that are said to occur sometime before the coming of Christ. Now, I ain't no Bible scholar, but even the Bible scholars and historians are not in complete agreement about these particular four horsemen in scripture. But they are, just suffice it to say, the four horsemen, they are a powerful metaphor for chaos and destruction. So Dr. Gottman, he drew on that imagery, that metaphor, so to speak, to describe four destructive communication patterns. And I said already, they are criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. And these, they can spell doom, real doom for a relationship. But just like the biblical horsemen signal breakdown of order and an onset of devastation, the Gottman's four horsemen signify behaviors that erode trust, erode intimacy, and it erodes emotional safety in a relationship. Hey, man. Hey, from the VA. So good to see you, brother. It's good to see you. Thank you for watching. Um, but there's some good news to the Four Horsemen as well. Because if a couple can recognize those behaviors and use the antidotes, they can rebuild connection and avoid the relationship end times, so to speak. So let's get into it and talk about each one of these four horsemen. The first horseman of the relationship apocalypse is criticism. And what is that? So, criticism involves attacking your partner's character or their personality rather than addressing a specific behavior. Criticism attacks the person, and we don't want to do that. For an example, you might say, well, you always forget to take out the trash. You're so lazy. What's wrong with you? Or criticism typically involves two phrases: you always or you never. And I have to say, from my perspective, those are two very destructive phrases. You always or you never, because nobody always does anything and nobody never does nothing. So when I'm counseling a couple, I I always recommend, see, I use always, but in this situation, I'm saying I always because I do encourage couples to remove those two phrases from their communication with their partner. You always or you never. So that's criticism, attacking your partner, attacking them personally, attacking their character. So what's the antidote to criticism? And all an antidote is, it's just something that counteracts something else. So the antidote for criticism is what's known as the gentle startup. And I love, 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 love the gentle startup. And I think some of you may have heard me speak about that before. So the gentle startup, it uses I statements and it focuses on how you feel, followed by a specific request. Now, here is a caveat with that. It requires being in touch with your emotions and being able to identify what it is you are feeling, and also having a willingness to communicate that to your partner. I have heard some people in relationships say, well, I don't want them to know how I'm really feeling, because they're guarded. They have this wall up between them and their partner, and they are afraid in some way to be vulnerable, because when we share our innermost thoughts and feelings with our partner, it is absolutely a place of vulnerability. So in order to use the gentle startup, it's helpful and almost required to be in a place where you are willing to be vulnerable and you are open to sharing your feelings with your partner, but also knowing what those feelings are. I think y'all heard me say before that I'm not a fan of saying, well, I feel some kind of way. If the cookie man says that to me, I'm saying, well, what kind of way is that? What is it you're feeling? I don't know. And again, I don't know if it's because of my age, or just that's my personal pet peeve. I'm not a fan of saying, oh, I feel some type of way. I think it's healthier and beneficial and enhancing to effective communication to be able to say to your partner exactly what it is that you're feeling. So, how do you practice this? You express feelings. Again, you start with I statements. Use I feel rather than you make me feel. You make me feel can put someone on the defensive, and it's putting the onus on them. Okay. And we want to avoid that when we are uh, attempting to communicate effectively, but also avoid criticism and avoid attacking our partner. So we start with I feel rather than saying you make me feel. We describe a situation, you stick to the specific behavior or event without generalizing, and you state your need. Clearly state what you need without blaming, without shaming, or without accusing. So that is the antidote to criticism. Use I statements. Here's an example. One example, your partner may, from your perspective, not be helping around the house to the degree that you would like. Criticism says, "You're so lazy. You never help around the house. What's wrong with you?" That's criticism. The antidote, the gentle startup, sounds like this: "I'm feeling overwhelmed with all the chores lately. So I'm wondering if you could help by taking care of the dishes tonight." Okay, you've said how you feel. You've expressed what you need from your partner, and hey, Miss D, and you haven't attacked, you haven't criticized, you haven't shamed, and you haven't blamed. You've stated how you feel, and you let your partner know what it is you need. Another example of how to combat criticism: let's say there is a miscommunication. Your partner's running late, and he or she forgot to call. Criticism sounds something like this: "You never think about what you do and how it affects me. You're inconsiderate. You are just so freaking inconsiderate." That's criticism. The antidote for that, using the gentle startup, sounds something like this: "I felt worried when I didn't hear from you earlier this evening. So next time, I would really appreciate if you could let me know if you're running late. It would really help me to feel more at ease. I was just a little worried." You see the difference? It's saying the same thing, but in a very different way. Jono said, "Many people become defensive when criticized, even if they don't intend to be, and or even when the issue is addressed in a respectful manner." Yes. Hold on. Where's my mouse? Let me just put that up. Yes, I do have some advice for that, Jono. And we are going to talk about that when we get to the third of the four horsemen, which is defensiveness, because there's a way around that too. There's an antidote for two. Thank you for that question. And we're definitely going to get to it as we progress. So we've talked about we've talked about criticism. The antidote for criticism is the gentle startup, what criticism sounds like versus what the gentle startup sounds like. And why do these work? Why did these two particular examples of the gentle startup work? Well, one is they start with "I feel," so clearly express emotions without attacking, and they focused on a specific behavior rather than generalizing. And they included a positive request. You can include a positive request, a positive need, a positive preference. And I say positive because you want to state what you do want as opposed to what you don't want. That is stating a positive need. Sidell said there's a difference between criticizing someone and expressing how you are feeling. Absolutely. That's a huge difference. And that's exactly what criticism versus the gentle startup is all about, because it helps to facilitate a positive and productive conversation rather than escalating to a conflict or an argument or something in that regard. And that's the goal. It's to have effective communication and to be able to manage conflict in a healthy way. So that was the first of the four horsemen of the relationship apocalypse. The second horseman of relationship apocalypse is contempt. And the Gottman say of the four horsemen, this one is the most dangerous. Absolutely the most dangerous. And why is it most dangerous? Because contempt involves treating your partner with blatant disrespect. And when that's present, the Gottman say that if contempt runs amok in your relationship and it is left unchecked, they say that they can predict within 80-something% accuracy that marriage or relationship is going to come to an end. So that's why they say this one is the most serious. So contempt involves treating your partner with blatant disrespect. And what might this look like? And I say it that way because disrespect doesn't always look the same to every individual. So these are some examples: sarcasm, mocking your partner, eye rolling, and listen, sister girls, y'all know we got that down pat, or name calling. And it conveys sort of a sense of superiority, and the relationship is pretty much doomed if that just runs amok and you don't put it in check. Respect, mutual respect, excuse me, is absolutely a necessary component for a healthy relationship. Because if you ain't got no respect for your partner, it's hard to connect with someone like that. So how can you have a deep emotional connection with someone that you don't respect? How can you like someone that you don't respect? You may feel that you love the person, but how can you like them? How can y'all get along? How can there be peace in your home if you don't respect your partner? And anyone who might be just joining in, we're talking about the four horsemen of the relationship apocalypse, and we've covered one already, and now we're talking about contempt. So the antidote, how do you counteract contempt? Well, the Gottman say that you foster appreciation and respect by regularly, I'm going to say that again, by regularly expressing gratitude, admiration, and affection for your partner. How does that look from a practical perspective? You focus on the positive. It's got to be something positive about your partner. They can't be all negative. And if you believe it's all negative about your partner, then I have a question for you. What you doing there? So, from my perspective, there must be something positive about this person that you have chosen to spend your life or a portion of your life with. So, you focus on the positive. You make a habit of noticing and also commenting on things that you appreciate about your partner. Some daily affirmations. You can share at least one thing you admire or are grateful for with your partner every single day. It's funny, not funny. I've been in sessions with couples sometimes, and I will end the session with something you love about your partner, or say something positive of your partner that does not include parenting. Okay, because I want it to be about them, about the individual, about what drew you to them, why you fell in love with them, why do you still love them. And I don't want to hear nothing about she a good mama, he a good daddy. I don't want to hear that. What do you love about your partner? And sometimes when I say that, there's some silence, because when a couple has been in conflict over an extended period of time, we tend to no longer remember or want to remember or focus on the positive attributes of our partner. I don't want to hear about parenting. I want to hear, is he kind? Is she thoughtful? Is he encouraging? Does she have my back? I want to hear things like that, not about parenting. So again, anyone who's listening out there, comments, questions. Oh, Boo Boo, I'm sorry. My daughter Sadell, she just wrote, criticizing is more like someone is doing something wrong, right? The I feel or I would like is more about you. Absolutely. Elaine is asking, what happens when the one that is being disrespected accepts it? That is a great question. And at that point, When a partner is being repeatedly disrespected and they are accepting that respect, then that to me is an indication of something that's going on inside of them. Could be low self-esteem, low self-worth. It might be a situation where there is a huge difference in the relationship balance of power or the power dynamic inside that relationship. But if that is occurring, it is something that, from my perspective, really should be addressed. The one who is accepting the disrespect, I believe, could benefit from some individual counseling so that their ego strength could be built up to the point where they are no longer accepting of disrespect from their partner, so that they can get to a place where they can set and enforce appropriate boundaries. You can't do that if you have weak ego strength or if you have low self-esteem or low self-worth. An individual in that regard will be either unable to or unwilling to set and enforce healthy boundaries. So thanks for that question, Elaine. That's a very good question. So again, we're talking about those four horsemen of relationship apocalypse. We've looked at criticism. We've looked at contempt. Oh, here's another way of, I didn't give examples about dealing with contempt. I'm going to give you two examples. Here's one situation where your partner forgets to pick up groceries. And he ain't forget, or he or she didn't forget for the first time or the second time or the third time. And you say to them, this is what contempt sounds like. Seriously? How hard is it to remember to pick up groceries? You are so unreliable. One simple thing I ask, and you can't even do that. What's wrong with you? That's what contempt sounds like. The antidote sounds something like this. Listen, babe, I know that you have had a lot on your plate lately, and I appreciate the ways that you help out me and just in general around the house. But maybe we can figure out a reminder system so that the groceries don't slip through the cracks. Okay? You haven't pointed fingers at him or her, even though they're the ones that forgot to pick up the groceries. You have expressed an appreciation for what they are doing rather than just pointing out, or in this situation, not pointing out at all what they're not doing. So that's one example. Another example of contempt and the antidote, what it might look like. Let's say there's a disagreement and your partner disagrees with your suggestion for plans for the weekend. So contempt may sound something like this. Of course, you'd come up with that idea. Do you even think things through? Do you even think about what I might want to do? That's what contempt may sound like. The antidote may sound something like this. You know, babe, I hear that you have a different preference for the weekend. And I appreciate how thoughtful you are about planning. However, let's see if we can come up with something that we both might enjoy. Haven't blamed, haven't shamed, and you also have shown appreciation for the other individual. So why is that working? Because it focuses on expressing gratitude. You acknowledge the effort and intention of the other person, and that can encourage constructive dialogue and lessen the possibility of defensiveness. Because when you practice appreciation and respect consistently, a couple can replace contempt with a more positive and collaborative dynamic in their relationship. So now let's talk about the third of the four horsemen of the relationship apocalypse. And John, this gets to your question. That is defensiveness. And defensiveness is a way of attempting to protect yourself from a perceived attack by shifting the blame. When someone is defensive, they might respond to a complaint with a counter complaint. I've talked about that. I call that hijacking the conversation. Or they may respond or act as if they're the victim. They may take on this victim mode. And why is it destructive? Because it blocks the ability to have a constructive dialogue. And it also definitely has the potential to escalate the conversation to a conflict, an argument, because typically when defensiveness shows up, logic leaves the room. Because now one has become defensive. Now the other one has got to defend against that one's defensiveness, especially if you uh, brought a concern to your partner and they came back with another concern rather than addressing the initial concern that was brought up in the first place. So when defensiveness shows up, usually the conversation is pretty much over at that point, because you're gonna kind of keep going back and forth. Well, yes, you did. And no, I didn't. Well, I only did because you did. Well, I only did because you did. And you find yourself in this loop, just spiraling down that rabbit hole. So then what is the antidote to defensiveness? Take responsibility. Be accountable. Be accountable for your part in whatever the issue is, even if you think it's a teensy, tiny little part. Just be accountable. Because in this regard, percentages doesn't matter, or percentages don't matter. Okay, that's better English. Percentages don't matter. So you may think, well, my partner was 90% responsible and I'm only 10% responsible. However, if your partner is bringing this concern to you, accept responsibility and be accountable for your 10%. And you can have a conversation at some other time about what you perceive to be your partner's 90%. That's not the time to have that conversation. So, the antidote to defensiveness, how do you practice it? Again, you acknowledge your role. Even a partial admission or being accountable in a small way can help to de-escalate a conflict. You want to stay calm. You want to listen to your partner's concern without defending. Don't defend yourself when your partner brings a concern for you. Even if, and here's the thing, sometimes your partner may bring a concern to you about something, and in your mind, we're thinking, well, daggone, he does the same thing or she does the same thing. That's not the time to bring that up, because that absolutely will come out as a defense, because you're not being accountable for when you do it. I know maybe it doesn't sound fair, and I know a lot of people don't like it, but there was something that my mother-in-law said to me many years ago. Val, do you want to be right or do you want peace? So we got to ask ourselves sometime, is this the right time to bring this up? Is this going to add peace to the conversation, or does it have the potential to escalate the conversation? So now, we are no holds barred in the midst of a huge fight when it could have all been avoided with a simple practice of accountability. So we're going to talk about, what does that look like? You show empathy. Validate your partner's feelings. Validate, validate, validate. You don't have to agree with what your partner is saying in order to validate their feelings, because that's what you're validating. If your partner comes to you and say, I feel blah, blah, blah because of blee, 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 you're validating how they're feeling in that moment. You don't have to agree, but I do encourage you to validate whatever emotion or feeling that your partner is experiencing. So, examples of what that may look like. Let's say it has to do with household chores again. and your partner is frustrated because you didn't take out the trash or make the bed or mop the floor or clean the bathroom or whatever the thing might be. And your partner, let's say they use the gentle startup and they use I statements and they make a positive request and you still become defensive. And this is what defensiveness may sound like. Why are you always on my back about this? Well, I mean, if you really want it done, you could do it yourself. That is a form of defensiveness. The antidote, you take responsibility by saying, babe, you're right. I didn't take care of the trash or the bed or whatever. Like I said, I would. I'll do it now and make sure I'm more mindful about it in the future. How does that sound to y'all? I'm just wondering, is any of this making sense? Is it hitting home? Do you feel as if this is something that you can practice with your partner? Talk to me. Let me know what your thoughts are. Because some people that I've shared this with, they think I'm talking crazy. Like, oh, this is just not possible to do. Yeah, it is possible. Oh, Elaine is saying that it's good. Thank you, cousin Elaine. I appreciate that. Oh, Myron was saying yes, it does hit home. Yeah, because we a lot of times behave that way, in the midst of our relationship. John said, "Gonna tell my daughter-in-law to watch this because she's getting she's getting defensive." Boy, so why does the antidote for defensiveness, which is taking responsibility, being accountable, what is it? Why does that work? Because it involves acknowledging your role in a situation, even if it's a small one. It shifts the focus from blaming to problem solving. That is so key because in healthy communication, in really good conflict management, we don't want to attack each other, but we do want to join together in attacking whatever the issue or the problem is or the problems are. And it also taking accountability and being responsible for your part, it creates a space for collaboration and shows empathy for your partner's feelings. And I'm telling you, empathy goes a long way when you are dealing with your partner, when he or she is coming to you with their heart in their hand, so to speak. And it's almost like they're handing it over to you because they're being open and they're being vulnerable and they're sharing what they are feeling in that moment. That they've got their heart in their hand and they're waiting to see, how are you going to handle it? Are you going to handle it with care, with love, with empathy, with kindness and consideration? Or are you going to smash it with defensiveness and with criticism and contempt? So just think about that the next time your partner comes to you with a concern. And I want you to visualize them, especially if they're using the gentle startup. I want you to visualize them standing in front of you with their heart in your hand, waiting to see what your response is going to be and how you're going to handle their heart. Just think about that. So the fourth horseman of the relationship apocalypse is stonewalling. What is stonewalling? Well, stonewalling happens when one partner either shuts down, withdraws, or disengages completely from the conversation. In that moment, they're usually feeling overwhelmed or emotionally flooded. Excuse me. What can stonewalling look like? Oh, thank you, Sidel. She said that's a good visual. Stonewalling can look like turning away. It can look like shutting down or using silence as a way to avoid conflict. And I made reference to emotional flooding. What is that exactly? So emotional flooding is when you feel like you are up to your neck in your emotions and your feelings. And you may experience elevated heart rate. You may experience rapid, shallow breathing. You might lose the ability to focus. You might feel tension all throughout your body. And you generally just begin to feel overwhelmed and you want to escape. This conversation is too much. It's overwhelming me. I can't take it. So I'm starting to feel all this stuff. And very often you start to feel it from down in your belly and you can feel it coming up. You start to feel nervous. You start to feel anxious. Then your heart starts to beat fast. You start to breathe fast. You might start to tense up. And all you want to do is get away. You don't want to talk about this no more. You don't want to deal with it. And in a way, that on the surface might make sense, but not if you are in the midst of a conversation or a conflict with your partner. If you just walk away or you just become silent, it can really make matters worse. You may think it's helping because you might think you're avoiding a conflict, or you might think that you're keeping the peace, so to speak. But what it does, it actually communicates disinterest and disconnect to the other person. And that can be incredibly painful for the other partner to believe and feel as if you are either disinterested and or you have disconnected from them entirely. So Dell says, yeah, we're going to talk about that too. Healthy ways to do that. There's a way to stonewall healthily, but you have to be willing to say that it's too much in the moment and express how you're feeling, but you must go back to it at a later time. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. That is the antidote. Right. Maybe stonewalling isn't the word, but yeah, I get what you mean. Um, So the antidote for stonewalling is something that's called self-soothing. That will help you to manage your emotions and to re-engage in the conversation when you're ready. So what does that look like? How do you practice it? First, be willing to recognize and honestly acknowledge when you are flooding or when you are beginning to flood. You got to pay attention to the signs of feeling overwhelmed, the racing heartbeat, the shallow breathing, the feeling as if you just want to shut down. You got to take a break. Let your partner know that you need time to calm down, to get yourself together. You engage in calming activities. I want to stress that again. You engage in calming activities. You don't just walk away and go sit in the corner and wallow or ruminate on whatever the concern is, because that won't allow you to de-escalate. That'll just keep you in that spiral. So you go off and you engage in a calming activity. You can do something relaxing. You can do some deep breathing. You can engage in a mindfulness activity. You can take a walk. You can listen to music. You can dance. Anything that has the potential of calming you down. Christians, read a scripture. Listen to 5 or 10 minutes of a sermon that's helpful and encouraging. Whatever you need to do to calm down so that you can get to a place where you are emotionally ready to resume the conversation. You have to revisit the discussion when you feel you are more regulated and when you are ready to communicate. Because when you're flooded, you can't communicate effectively when you're flooded. It's just not going to happen. That's why it's so important to disengage, but in a healthy way with self-soothing. What does that look like? Here's some examples. You're feeling overwhelmed during an argument. Your partner's upset, start to feel emotionally flooded. So this is what stonewalling may look like. You're looking away. You're no longer making eye contact. You just get silent. You say nothing. Or you just get up and walk away and don't say anything. Elvis has left the building. But Elvis ain't said nothing before he got up and left. That's an example of stonewalling in the midst of an argument or a heated conversation. So the antidote, the self-soothing, what might it sound like? It might sound something like this. Babe, I'm feeling really overwhelmed right now, and I need a short break to calm down. We can talk about this in maybe 20 or 30 minutes, and then we can come back. Is that I really need that right now. Okay? That's an example of the antidote to stonewalling, is to self-soothe. Sadell said, don't just say we'll talk about it later. It helps to be specific, right? Give me 10 minutes to calm down. Or let's revisit this tomorrow night because I'm feeling overwhelmed right now. Absolutely. Absolutely. You don't ask for a timeout, so to speak, without being specific. 10 minutes, 20 minutes. It might take till the next day. You might not have time. You both are working. You've got busy lives. You might not be able to revisit it until tomorrow evening when you come home and if you have children and the kids are in bed. And now we could sit down and have an uninterrupted conversation about whatever we were talking about yesterday that we had to shut down. And here's the thing. Whomever was flooded and needed to pause the conversation is the one that must resume the conversation. The onus is on that individual. I don't think it's fair for your partner to come back to you and say, babe, you ready? Can we finish that conversation now? I don't think your partner should have to do that. If you're the one who paused it, then from my perspective, you are the one who should resume it. Another way to say is this conversation, let's say you're talking about something that's really crucial to the relationship, like finances. A lot of couples have issues with finances. And studies have shown that issues with finances can result in divorce even more than marital infidelity. Okay. So let's say you're having a conversation about finances and it becomes tense and you start to withdraw. So you sit in silence or you pick up with my phone. You do one of these numbers. Your partner's talking but you got your phone in your hand. You're not looking at them. You're scrolling on your phone. You're not responding. You might grunt every once in a while, but you're not contributing to the conversation because you've shut down. So that's what stonewalling may look like in that situation. Here's what self-soothing may sound like. Sweetie, this conversation is really important. And I want us to have this conversation, but I'm not in the right headspace to really think clearly right now. I need to take a walk to cool off, or I need to go and listen to some music. And I promise we're going to revisit this in half an hour or 45 minutes. But for right now, I'm not in the headspace to do that. So I would appreciate being able to pause this conversation, and we'll come back to it later. Why do these work? Because it acknowledges your need for a break. It focuses on your own emotional regulation. Because when you are dysregulated, you can't have a meaningful conversation with your partner. And you commit to re-engaging. Commit to re-engaging and commit to your partner. Say, babe, I'm leaving this conversation, but I'm not leaving you. Especially if you have to go outside to go for a walk or do something like that. Make sure your partner knows. Reassure them you're leaving the conversation, but you're not leaving them. You are committing to them, and you are committing to the relationship, and you are committing to re-engaging in the conversation. Let your partner know that you'll return to the discussion, because that can prevent your partner from experiencing feelings of rejection themselves. Because if you just up and walk away, that does feel like rejection. Not only feels like, it is rejection. So you want to avoid that with your partner. Self-soothing reduces emotional flooding, and it ensures conversations are more constructive and less emotionally charged. because when emotions are running high, especially if both partners' emotions are running really high, there's no way that you're going to have a meaningful conversation. There's no way that you're going to effectively manage the conflict. It's just not going to happen. So, to summarize, we were talking about the four horsemen of relationship apocalypse. So we talked about criticism with the antidote of the gentle startup. We talked about contempt with the antidote of showing appreciation and respect for your partner. We talked about defensiveness. The antidote is taking responsibility. We talked about stonewalling. The antidote is self soothing. So if you and your partner, whether you're married, whether you're in a committed relationship, whatever situation you may find yourself in with your partner, if you commit to consistently practicing these antidotes over the course of time, you can build healthier communication habits and you can strengthen your relationship and you'll be able to effectively manage conflict within your relationship. So, from my perspective, that covers the four horsemen of the relationship apocalypse. So, some of you have made comments, some of you have asked questions. If anyone else has a question or comment that they would like to have addressed, if you have a question that you would like to have addressed, and it may not be about the four horsemen of the apocalypse, but just a general relationship question. If you have that and you would like for me to address it to the best of my ability, I'm willing to do that. So just put it in the chat, and I will use these last few minutes to address whatever question that you may have. Ooh, I tell you, these hot flashes are killing me. My glasses is fogging up because I'm so hot. I gotta turn on my fan. Give me 1 minute. But anywho, for those of you who are watching live or watch later, again, I appreciate you. I appreciate you showing up. I appreciate you being interactive. I really appreciate if you will hit like, and subscribe and share the video with anyone that you think it may be helpful. I'm hoping that it can be helpful for some of you who are listening, even if you're not in a relationship right now, because I would imagine at some point you would like to be in a relationship and you would like to be able to manage conflict and to be able to communicate effectively with your partner whenever you get into a relationship. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be with a romantic partner. It could be a family relationship. It could be a friend relationship. You can still practice you can still practice the antidote to these four horsemen, because friends sometimes can be critical of one another, or contemptuous of one another, or become defensive or stonewall in their conversation. So you just want to be prepared. What is that saying? To be forewarned is to be forearmed. So I think that's how that saying goes. Thank you so much, Myron. And I hope that you will tune in again. I appreciate you here, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And of course, follow us on Instagram as well. On every platform, we are Marriage Beyond the Breach. Marriage Beyond the Breach. On YouTube, on Instagram, and on Facebook. And Nicole is saying it's extremely helpful, and definitely she'll use these alternative techniques. That's good. I am so happy that I could be helpful in some ways, because that's my goal ultimately. Those of you who know me, y'all know that I am a huge fan of relationships, of marriage, and I want to see people succeed in their relationships, to be mutually happy, to have healthy communication, to have deep emotional connections in your relationship. So, thank you again. Join us in, I think, 2 weeks, because we're not here next weekend on account of, let me look at my calendar. We're not here next weekend because that is Thanksgiving weekend. But so we're not here on the 1st, but we are here on the 8th, on December 8th. And we're going to be talking about Christianity and mental health. You don't want to miss that conversation, because I've got some great people lined up for that. You know, I got one of my favorite people in the world. Dr. Danita Thompson is going to be here, Dr. Angel Wyndham, and Alvin Smith. He hasn't been here in a while, but I'm looking forward to him being here, and all three of them being here, and having a magnificent conversation about Christianity and mental health. So be here on the 8th. And thank you so much for being here tonight. Have a great week. A wonderful Thanksgiving. Wonderful Thanksgiving. God bless you. I'll see you next time.